Hi guys, I want to take you guys through day 228 of the war for Ukraine. We're also going to touch on day 227. Quite a lot is happening. I kind of want to move through it fairly quickly. Did you guys know that 75 missiles, ballistic missiles, were fired into Ukraine yesterday, right? The Of those, 41 were actually intercepted. So more than half were intercepted or shot down. These were long-range ballistic missiles. 10 people were killed in the nationwide barrage and 60 injured. That was the initial report. It's not clear exactly where we are now. The thing that's really concerning is that targets included residential areas in Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia is the location of Europe's biggest nuclear power station, and Zaporizhia was struck by 12 missiles. So it feels like there's a veiled message in that. Now let's go to Sky News. Putin says missile strikes are in retaliation for Crimea blast, right? And somewhere else I read where he said something like it was common sense or it was the logical thing to do, right? So remember, kind of as I started covering this, I said what we're concerned about here is escalation. What you're seeing now is serious escalation. 75 missiles, ballistic missiles, fired into a country largely targeting cities is a big deal. 3 minutes ago, there was a missiles landing in I think it's Lviv in Western Ukraine. So right now, that is continuing. What I'm telling you now happened yesterday. 75 missiles launched. That was yesterday. Right now, there are missiles targeting Western Ukraine. And one wonders, is there a message in that? Afternoon, Sky, good to see you there. Mrs. Kelly, good to see you as well. So Putin said, let's just kind of bring that up a bit bigger. I hate the way it does this. Anyway, let's actually just put something else there. So let's go through some of these headlines. This is from Al Jazeera. Putin says response to more Ukrainian attacks will be severe. So in a way, what he's saying is, if you attack us in revenge, there's going to be something very severe. Again, there's been this talk throughout this time. Is he going to use nuclear weapons? Is he bluffing about that? What do you think he's hinting at in that statement? Russia's president threatens harsh response to further attacks after Moscow launched retaliatory attacks across Ukraine. Now, if you think about it, like comparing apples to apples, Ukraine attacks a bridge and 3 people die, right? The response to that, and they said this is in response to that, in response to attacking a bridge, Russia fires 75 missiles, that's on one day, on Ukrainian cities, and that's continuing. And then you say that is a logical and proportional response. And the attack on the bridge was terrorism. I just think you've kind of got to think about that. Okay, so here's another headline from the New York Times. A distracted Russia is losing its grip on its old Soviet sphere. Then this is referring to OPEC towing the line with Russia. Bear in mind that Saudi Arabia is a lot closer to Russia geographically than to the USA, right? So they say a balanced thoughtful Russia praises OPEC for production cut. I don't know if you guys have noticed, oil prices have gone back up. They've sort of gone back down, I think, to $84. Well, now they've gone back up to 94, and they'll probably go even higher. Something else that has happened is I think wheat prices have also shot up due to the current escalation. So there's been a very direct result to that. Then I think I've just dealt with that. This is 19 hours ago. Shock and horror after Russia's wave of strikes across Ukraine. And that's actually another bridge that was struck. That also seems to be a message to say, kind of tit for tat. And that's what I've asked you guys in the poll. Do you think this is just tit for tat? Do you think it's there's some kind of escalation going on? Do you think it's extremely serious? What do you guys think? Git, good to see you. I think you're in Sweden. SM Kovalinsky, good to see you. Justice Jenny, good to see you as well. Margaret Allen says, this is scary now, love from Scotland. Then there's this article from Business Insider. Sergei Surovikin, commander leading Russia's attacks on Ukraine, described as absolutely ruthless. Then there's this article from The Guardian, what we know on day 227. I'm not going to go through that in too much detail. There's just a quick run through, but I think it's necessary. Blast rock bridge linking Crimea to Russia. Zelensky warns on nuclear weapons. Moscow declares Russian rapper a foreign agent. All this sort of thing is taking place. And yeah, so explosion shook Kharkiv, and so on and so on. I'm not really going to go through all of that. Where's that image again? Okay, there it is. This image to me, I think, just shows in a nutshell the sort of response. Now, in the beginning, it actually felt like Russia was targeting infrastructure, and I think he was, but he's also hitting just residential buildings, as you see over here. SM Kovalinsky says it seems a serious escalation. Another question is, how far is this going to go? Is Ukraine going to hit back? Is Russia then going to hit back? Where's this going? It's serious now. Is it going to get more serious? Okay, so let me take you through. Yeah, so basically, how will Ukraine react? And I think the best way for them to react, this is my opinion, the best way for Ukraine to react is to push the front lines back, just to keep the focus on the front lines. Putin also described the attack on the Kerch Bridge as I'm not going to use that word. And then I'm just going to go through some headlines. This is a picture of Zelensky. It just gives you an idea of the emotions on his face. You can imagine, when I looked at his face, I was thinking, I nearly died on Sunday, and I've had really bad dreams. Last night I had a nightmare that my father died. I've been having these really disturbing dreams, and you sort of wonder, what on earth is he dreaming about? How on earth does he cope day after day when lots of people you know and your countrymen are dying every single day? Your decisions are going to impact that. Margaret Zabinski, thanks very much for that. This is going to be a very quick report. I need to get out of here and get to the gym. I just want to quickly kind of inform you guys of this. But you can kind of see there's weariness and steeliness at the same time in his face. And this has been going on now for 7 months. We're at day 228. How long is this going to keep going on? So here are a couple of other headlines that I picked up. North Korea says missile tests are practice for tactical nuclear strikes on South Korea. Now, what I find quite concerning is there's militant activity, there's escalation in one part of the world, and you can literally have someone in another part of the world that kind of gets triggered or activated or feels like I need to use this opportunity to strike while the iron is hot, kind of thing, right? So you could actually have this conflict almost leading to something else that has been bubbling over, right? And so yeah, you've got North Korea being pretty belligerent, and I don't really take that very seriously, but there's always the possibility that something relatively crazy and relatively random can happen basically just somewhere else. There are also other things going on, protests in Iran and so on. But this is definitely something to think about, right? Then there's this statement that I think, I don't actually have the actual link to it. Zelensky speaks with Macron on need for increased pressure on Moscow following attacks. So Zelensky, do you have that picture of him again? It's not that one. Let me just bring it up again. Zelensky's response to these attacks has really been to turn to France and say, we need to increase pressure. And I think the other way that they want to respond is financial pressure on Russia. That's kind of the other tactic. So they will never hit back really at Russia directly. They will hit back indirectly with sanctions, which seems very toothless. But then I think the other way is to push back on the front. I think that's the other aspect. Becky says the world is in a mess right now. Definitely isn't in a good place. So I want to show you an image of the bridge. That is really the reason why a lot of this is happening. So in a weird way, this is kind of a mystery. Like, who did this? How did it happen? And actually also what weapon was used. That's not clear either. What I want to show you here is you can quite clearly see, let me take myself out. You can quite clearly see here that one of these roadways is taken down, but the other one is still there. So this artery hasn't been destroyed, hasn't been, what's the word? It's still operational. And if you look carefully, the same thing applies with this train track. It actually has a double, one going one way and another one going the other way, I guess. And so that corridor, that the rail corridor and the road corridor, although it's been sort of reduced, it's been made less effective. It nevertheless is still operational. And so one wonders, will there be another hit on that, and then will there be another Russian response to that? So that's kind of the situation we're facing. But there's quite an interesting mystery around this. How was this actually done? Because this required quite a lot of military precision, and people thought that the Ukrainians didn't have it. And so there's some speculation that did a Western ally actually sort of show up and act on Ukraine's behalf. So I want to talk to you guys very quickly about that aspect. So remember, all of this started with a mystery surrounding the Nord Stream sabotage. And this channel sort of took a particular position, but we finally sort of settled on what happened there as a Russian hybrid warfare operation. Now, if you think about what's going on here, it feels to me like Russia hit Nord Stream, which is something that Europe kind of needs, right? And it was done in sort of very close to European territory. I think some of it was in sort of Swedish territorial waters or something like that. But anyway, Russia actually hit that pipeline, which I think is to some extent Russian built, but also built with, I'm not sure, maybe you guys know better. I think German money also went into that. European money went into that. And so Russia hitting that, it's really their own infrastructure, but it's also European infrastructure. In a weird way, you could say this attack on this bridge is it's a retaliatory attack, but of course it's Ukraine. Ukraine wasn't hit. Ukraine isn't really affected by Nord Stream in a way, right? If you think about it. But just from a purely Russian perspective, you could say Russian hit something that was actually of importance to Europe prior to the winter. Then someone hit something of Russia, and then Russia responds by firing 75 missiles. Just kind of an interesting aspect. John, I think I'm gonna kick you off. There we go. Jennifer says, I don't believe Putin is bluffing. He's pissed off. Okay. Right. So just to read through this, we don't quite know how it happened in terms of this particular incident or who did it. Ukraine doesn't have the capacity to hit that bridge. And that's led to speculation, as I said, that a Western ally of Ukraine with access to surface to air may have been fired from a ship. That's the speculation. They've also been saying it could have been a Grim 2 missile. This part is really interesting. It's a missile called a Grim, GRIM-2 missile, which is Ukrainian weapons technology thought to be under development but not yet available. Well, maybe it is available. Maybe it's just become available. Personally, I believe the explosion occurred above ground in the air, just from the light that appears a split second before this happens. I'm certainly not a military expert, but it seems like there's a bit of a split second of illumination in the air above, shortly before detonation. Anyway, according to the Financial Times, that's this article, what caused the blast on the bridge? This is a quote from the article. 2 homegrown Neptune anti-ship missiles were used to destroy the Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. That was in April. That's a long time ago. That was really months and months ago, maybe 5 months ago. And that was quite a big triumph at that time. And that seemed to show that Ukraine had the ability to effectively use this type of airborne attack against Russia, right, at shorter distances. So it was a new homegrown Neptune anti-ship missile. Could you use that sort of thing on a bridge? I don't see why not. In terms of, when I say I don't see why not, I mean, I don't see why that couldn't have been the weapon that was used. Then going back to the article, it says, those surprisingly accurate hits suggest that Western allies may be providing technical help to fine-tune Ukrainian weapons. They have so far turned down Ukrainian requests for longer-range US-made missiles that can be fired from the HIMARS. Now, you can imagine if Russia fires 75 long-range ballistic missiles into Ukraine, you can imagine that Ukraine would want to sort of answer that with the same thing, fire back how many long-range ballistic missiles, but they don't really have them. And they've actually been asking for them, but the West hasn't been giving it to them. So in a weird way, Ukraine is kind of like a punching bag. They're getting pummeled by Russia. They're supported by the West, but it's sort of conditional support. It's only up to a certain point because the West doesn't want this to escalate. If it does, it becomes their problem directly, right? So this is an image I just saw on the Financial Times. It's a Getty Image, and that is actually that's not the bridge connecting Russia to Crimea. I think that's in South Korea. I think that is just flying over South Korea, but what you see here is a kind of military escalation between South Korea and America, all the way in sort of Southeast Asia, in the Far East kind of thing. So if there's escalation taking place in Ukraine and Russia, there's also a little bit of escalation taking place even further east. Okay. Do I have anything else to report? Okay, I'm going to show you just another news article. This one also from Financial Times. Supply lines exposed. I don't know if they are yet compromised. So What remains to be seen is if there's going to be another attack on that bridge. We'll see. So this was really, really interesting. When someone was asked, what happened in terms of the bridge, the response was check for cloudy weather, thunder, rain, right? This, so someone asked, like, what happened with the bridge? And I think it was a Ukrainian official responded with a really cryptic message. And the Financial Times itself uses that statement. They say this was perhaps a cryptic reference to the Grim 2 Ukrainian missile with a theoretical range of 500 kilometers, which has been under development for decades. So has the West now provided Ukraine with the know-how to get that missile that they've been trying to develop with 500-kilometer capability? Have they now brought that online? Have they brought that prototype into kind of production? What is so interesting is when they were asked, how was this bridge hit? How was that done? And then the response was sort of cryptic to say, well, did you see the weather? It seemed like there was like stormy weather and thunder. Well, the word grim in Ukrainian, I think, is another word for thunder. It also says here, Grim, the missile's earlier name, Grom, are Ukrainian words for thunder. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky also described the weather in Crimea as cloudy in his nightly broadcast on Saturday. So kind of this weird subtext going on here. So yeah, the Ukrainians are no slouches, it looks like. I don't know what I think about this. I don't know what you guys think about this. It seems to me very cheeky, and it seems not to be very smart to provoke a superpower. And this seems to be very provocative, and you get the feeling that Putin is getting angry. You get the feeling that Putin is acting partly out of sort of ire, right? You know what I mean? I don't know if that is a good strategy. Maybe they want him to make a mistake in terms of his emotion, and maybe they're hoping that someone else is going to sort of not excuse that, right? Some of the people around him, I don't know. Tosha says, I've been following the situation closely since the beginning. That's what we're trying to do as well. I just think it's important that we pay attention right now. So what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is a clever strategy to make memes out of this? And obviously it goes into social media, and then it's provocative, and it makes Russians angry. Do you think that's a good tactic? Okay, so I'm not really going to take it any further. I saw somebody sent me this, which I think is actually fake news. Ukraine's president's office was destroyed by a missile. I don't know whether I really believe that. I haven't seen any other news reporting on that. I would imagine if that had happened, that you would see other news on that, and you just do not. So it's hard to say. Obviously, this is a developing story. There's updates coming all the time, and we're going to be monitoring them and reporting on them. Okay. Yeah, so I think I'm not really going to take it further than that. I really didn't want to do this really longer than 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So that's all from my side. I am going to be doing TCRS book club later today, 10 p.m. my time. I think that's 4 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys are interested in books and so on, we're going to be looking at the Scout Mindset, and we are going to be looking at another book called Being Wrong, and I think it promises to be quite an interesting discussion. So if you are someone who knows me, knows my channel, has read some of my books, and if you're interested in reading, you probably will find that definitely quite interesting. Well, I really look quite tired. I think I need a little swim in the gym, and hopefully I'll come back refreshed. Tosha Ray says, this is an important story, and I'm glad you're talking about it. The postage stamp does seem provocative. Yeah. Let's look at a couple of more comments. Okay, someone says, I think he's getting dementia. Celeste says, not a good idea to poke a bear. Okay, I think that is about it from my side. Any more comments? Okay. Okay, that is it from me. I will, as I say, keep continuing to cover this as it sort of happens, just covering the sort of current news and trying to just figure out what's happening and where is it going so that it doesn't catch us by surprise. Sky, thanks very much for that. Just put it up quickly. I just want to look at this last comment. There's a book in the way. Why do you think Putin hasn't been? What protects them? It's quite a good question. There's a kind of a silent agreement amongst world leaders. There was a time, I don't know if you guys remember. Come on. There was a time when quite a few leaders were assassinated. The French president, de Gaulle, I think, Kennedy. There was a time when that was happening, and they basically all just decided that they're not going to take that route. If that does happen, I think if you have that sort of thing taking place, then I think the world really has descended into chaos, because that at least is a kind of honor amongst thieves in a way. If you start having that taking place, then I really think things can get a heck of a lot worse. It seems like an easy solution, but you will then have counter plots, and the world will just become a lot more unstable and chaotic. So that is, I think, the reason. Okay, Mrs. Kelly says, try and have a good day, everyone. Guys, stay safe and stay informed, right? All the best. See you guys, the book club folks. I'll see you guys in a couple of hours from now. Have a great day. Ciao.